And hello, everyone. Welcome to Chivashan Gaming. I am Chivashan, and this is my first live stream here on Facebook. And it's still a new experience. I was trying to making sure sounds and video works behind the scenes there for a moment. So if you can't hear me or you see me talking and you hear nothing, please let me know. Things should be sounding okay as I learn this new platform. So again, welcome. I've live streamed before, doing video games and game reviews on Twitch for a while, but I stopped streaming almost now about a year ago, probably about 8 or 9 months ago. So it's been a long time since I've gone live. A little nervous, but I'm sure I'll get back into the swing of things. So I've decided to start trying to stream here on Facebook and giving myself more of a concentration instead of just doing video games, because this year I've really gotten back into my love of role playing, especially with the current world situation. Role playing online has blown up, and I've had an opportunity to come back to my roots and getting back into some good old Dungeons and Dragons, and other types of role playing. So, being that this is my first stream here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My online name, I go by Chiva Sean. It's an old gamer tag of mine that I've come to love and come to be known by. And um, yeah, so I have been playing tabletop role playing games now for almost about 30 years. Right when I started around age 10 or 11, starting, of course, with good old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition. Local friend of mine started to get the neighborhood kids together to play, and it was my first taste of role playing, and I immediately fell in love with it. Other than my friend liked to run very interesting campaigns, all of our characters were like superhuman. All of our stats were like well into their 20s, and he liked to run high level, powerful campaigns. When I first bought my first AD&D Second Edition Player's Handbook, I realized to myself, "Holy crap!" He was just ignoring all the rules, which is fine. You play the game as you want to play it, but he got me into the love of role playing. But then I got my first Dungeons and Dragons book, and I was hooked. And I started saving money, asking for books for Christmas, my birthdays, to expand my old school collection. And I ran a lot of D&D for some of my neighborhood friends for a very long time. I still remember the first campaign setting I ever purchased was Dark Sun, and it was more of a survival based game that broke a lot of the molded rules of Dungeons and Dragons, the way how like a lot of the races that were common, elves, halflings, dwarves, were almost warped in a way that they weren't the usual fantasy races that you were used to back then. So I kind of liked that change in dynamic. I quickly went from there. I played some Forgotten Realms. That was kind of a go-to. And then Ravenloft came out, and that became my all-time favorite setting back in the day. I loved the gothic horror. I loved that in Ravenloft you could have bits and pieces of all the different games in this horror setting. Dragonlance, Greyhawk. They even had a realm in there that was based out of Dark Sun that got pulled into Ravenloft. I think I already said Forgotten Realms. Even the parts of the Red Steel Savage Coast campaign was in there. So you could run any of your favorite campaigns and add that gothic horror type of flavor to it, and that became one of my favorites for a long time. Getting older, I actually moved away from Dungeons and Dragons, and we started playing other role-playing games. We got into the Palladium system for it wasn't too long, but we played a lot of Robotech. I really enjoyed the Riths campaign from Palladium. Never did their fantasy, but the Palladium system was a little more complex. It took very long to create characters. All of their skills were percentage based, and you had a lot of skills that you could muster in those games. Though combat turned pretty simple. Loved playing old school Cyberpunk. Back then, I think it was like Cyberpunk 20 or 2027. Now they revamped it to Cyberpunk 2077, and of course we have the brand new game that just came out that I just started playing, and I have to say it pays some homage to the original writing in the storyline, which I enjoyed. Um, it's always great to see when they actually bring in old school content from the books. Then we got heavily, and I mean heavily, into the world of darkness: Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Ascension, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Changeling the Dreaming. My personal favorite that came out at the end of the World of Darkness series, which was Demon the Fallen, and for years, me and my friends, we delved extremely heavily into the World of Darkness games. I think I ran Vampire the Dark Ages. I was doing the Transylvania Chronicles, which were 4 books each with 3 huge chapters that spanned hundreds of years, and then I threw my own um, stories in between the modules. And that was probably the longest campaign I've ran. I ran almost a good 2 years, and we still ended up not even finishing it before, just as probably most role players know, life eventually gets in the way, and sometimes you can't get together anymore, and you started getting older, jobs, people started getting girlfriends and developing families, and stuff started to kind of die out as we got older. This year, I decided I wanted to get back to my Dungeons and Dragons roots. A couple years ago, I dabbled in a little bit of 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons to kind of get back into it. But then this year, I really started getting back and learning the rules of 5e. Picked up a group with a bunch of friends, so we started playing. I actually started playing. I'm usually the type that's always the DM. Started playing with a group online, learning the 5e rules, and then I kind of switch off with another DM when he's taking a break. I'm starting to take over, and some of my old friends back in the day asked me to start running a group again. So now I'm back into really getting heavy into back into my D&D 5e roots, and it's been a lot of fun learning the new rules. It's been a lot of fun uh, uh, developing campaigns and uh, getting this moving. So that's a little bit about me, and my plans for this stream is to, in a way, have some deep and good, deep discussion about role playing Dungeons and Dragons, and to give my thoughts, my experience to people who want to hear it, people want to ask questions about how I run games, my thoughts on games, and hopefully be more informational. I do eventually, in time, want to get into some live gameplay, get some community interaction within that gameplay, even do one shots with with viewers that want to that want to join the community, and then see where we go from there. So we're trying to see if we can get some traction. I labeled this stream my session 0, because this is where we set the parameters of in a role playing game, these are the parameters of the game. So I'm kind of here setting the parameters of what to expect in these streams. So if you have any questions, if you want advice, please comment and we can go into it. I do want to get into the session 0, because when I first started coming back into my playing D&D once more, I started looking on social media, trying to get updated on where Dungeons and Dragons has been, especially since I took a big hiatus for a long time playing D&D. I started noticing this talk about session 0, and I had no clue what people meant. I was I'm an older man, and I'm like, what's this session 0 junk? I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I finally looked it up. And most of you here who are D&D fans know what a session 0 is, but for those who don't, it's basically technically your first session, where you sit down, you explain the campaign, you explain your house rules, you develop characters together before explain expectations before you start a campaign. And I looked at this and I was like, I already did that. It's like, to me, the session zero thing should have been um, like a normal part of actually playing Dungeons and Dragons or any type of role playing game. So I was always like, well, I already did this. I didn't know they actually just gave it a name. So it was great to see that now it's become, session zero has become a big part in developing your story and developing campaigns, and I've embraced it fully. I'm actually going to be running a session zero with another group, probably next week, as the game I'm currently playing in, the DM is ending his campaign. He's going to take a break to get ready for the next campaign, and then we're going to go right into mine. So we're running another session zero pretty soon. So I want to discuss a little bit more on session zero, and if you have any comments on what you expect in a session zero, please say something and we'll go over it. But we're going to go over to my main screen. There we go. This is from Tasha's the new Tasha's companion book that came out. There was a lot of controversy over this book. I got it, and for me, the my quick thoughts on Tasha's was that a lot of the information in here is more designed for the newer player or the newer DM. The subclass stuff is great, but a lot of it is UA material that we've already seen. Excuse me, it's already out there. They made a couple of tweaks here and there to the content to make it more viable for live gameplay. Um, Extra options are great, um, though a lot of it, the book I feel is good for those who are just starting out. Being so, we're talking about the Dungeon Master tools here in Chapter 4, where they actually do talk about your Session Zero more in great length than any of the other books. And when I read through this, again, a lot of it was, to me, was second nature, and that's just coming from experience. But those who are just getting started or wanting to learn how to DM, this is actually a great uh, breakdown on what you can really expect to do in a session zero. And I mean, it starts off with character and party creation and party formation. Um, I generally like to make sure, like when we do a session zero, the one thing that I've learned, and the only like requirement I really have of my players in a session zero, is that everybody's got to know each other. I don't care how you know each other. You can just be acquaintances. You can be related. If I have a party of 5 people, sometimes 2 or 3 will group up together and say we know each other because we've worked together, and they know the other 2 because they've done jobs for them, or use them for jobs or something along those lines, whatever it may be. And there goes my dog. Um, However however, the players themselves want to link each other together, I'm pretty open to. It's just the one rule: you got to know each other in some way, shape, or form. Last game I ran in a small homebrew setting that I'm still kind of working on. We started everybody in the same town, and 2 of the players work with each other. One was a bounty hunter, and he had literally a kobold sidekick. It was a kobold monk this character made, and he was kind of like his it was his protector and friend. And then the other 3 were known in the town, so they've known each other as acquaintances. Some of them good friends. So everybody, and it was enough to where it was to the, it was enough to where I can bring them together into a campaign, and they had knowing, so it was easier to just get the story moving forward. And that's what the first part of even Tasha brings out here is about party formation. It's like, here's questions here, like, are the characters related? What keeps the characters together? What does each character like most about every other member of the adventuring party? These are some great examples as to how to keep keep your party formation and solid in the beginning. I really recommend this as a dungeon master to be able to get the game going and get the game moving in the very beginning. So this is why these session zeros are very important. Um, some people like to do, and I did this a lot in World of Darkness, do the preludes, where literally the first session after your session zero, or even maybe a couple of sessions, you do the characters' preludes. Like, you basically role play bits and pieces of their upbringing up until the party members meet, and then you start to weave the party members in as they move along, as they actually role play them coming together as one. And what do we got here? Oh, Michael, thank you so much for the share. Welcome, my friend, my fellow Facebook. Thank you. Fellow Facebook streamer, check him out over at Jetpacks. You can give yourself a link if you so want to. I don't know how to do a link. I'm still learning how these commands here and stuff like that work. But I do thank you so much for sharing my stream out here today. We are talking about uh, going into my Dungeons and Dragons roots, talking about session zeros and my experiences with them and what I feel is important in session zeros when starting any type of role playing game. Really, this isn't even just for Dungeons and Dragons. I think you should do this for any role playing game that you may play. So we're looking at Tasha's Cauldron, which explains a little more detail what session zero should be about, and I was talking about preludes. So sometimes a good way to get the game going after you have your session zero is to do preludes. Actually, role play bits and pieces of a character's major parts of their history, and then role play out how they met the other members of the party, and then even expand that as to how the group gained a cohesiveness. They mentioned doing. They also did a lot in this book about talking about patrons, creating like a guild that they belong to, or they are servants to a local lord or a king. It's another great way to have your party cohesive, and doing a prelude kind of helps the players learn even how to role play their own characters. Because a lot of times when you first start a character, you have an idea in your mind as to how they act, how they're gonna, what they're gonna sound like. Some people love to try to give the characters a voice, but sometimes that can take a few sessions to really start getting that, getting into your character, figuring out his mannerisms, and a prelude can kind of help that along. And the best way to do a prelude is to make sure you ask some detailed questions about the person's background. Like parents. Do they have parents? Who were they? What were they? Were your parents former adventurers? Are they just the local tavern keepers? Are they the local blacksmiths? Or are they a bunch of bums? Do you even have parents? Whatever it may be. I always like to try to see, ask my players at least one defining event, especially the defining event that made them turn to adventuring or becoming the class that that they are. Like why did you become a cleric of Tyr, or why did you be what drew you to become a druid of the forest, or a ranger who hunts in the woods? What drew you to that? Was there what's usually that's like some sort of defining moment, even in our own lives, when we choose what we want to be when we finally grow up. Sometimes there's usually a defining moment behind that. What's a one I don't know how you'd call it. What's one flaw? Not even a flaw. Was there a large negative moment in your life? Sometimes a negative moment can put you on a path. Maybe you turn your character's a little evil, and somebody killed your father, and now you're looking, vengeance. That was a negative move, so no, maybe vengeance is your key, and then you become a paladin of vengeance, or even just a standard warrior. You learn how to fight, so you can find the person who killed your mom or dad. That's a negative connotation. That could be great to role play. Get that scene actually out there, so your player can start feeling those emotions, and then he's gonna, then he can better think about how his adult self would act once the game begins. So preluding is, I think, is something that can really help with your game. And I mentioned this in regards to party formations because of all the questions that they ask here, and something that should be hopefully well defined. Let's do some example party origins. If you want to do random rolls, you can easily do that. Running games for one player. I have never, ever ran a game for one player. I really don't know how that would work. They mentioned giving the players sidekicks, which is their kind of their new thing to create characters. I mean, we used to call them hirelings back in the day, but when you made a hireling, they would just kind of, you just kind of made an NPC, and I would use the same stats, and I think I would still do the same thing. So even if I ran a game for one person and I gave them a sidekick, I would just roll up another character, and most likely, I would control as a DM, I would probably control the character's personalities and stuff like that, and I may let the player at least do the roles in a combat situation or a social situation. Um, but generally, when I'm running a game, I don't think I'd ever do a one-player game. If you would do a one-player game, or if you've done a one-player game, I would love to hear your story. So please leave some comments. Let me know your story if you've actually ran a game with one person, because I would love to hear it. Um, the social contract. Now, this, again, to me, should have been self explanatory. If you're going to play with a bunch of people in a setting, most of the times growing up, we played with friends, so never really had to put a social contract down. We all knew each other. But especially nowadays, when a lot of people are playing online, playing with sometimes they're playing with strangers, just going on Roll20 and finding a looking for group, or finding some game on Demiplane. When you're trying to randomly join a new group of people, social contract might be a good idea, especially when you're playing with strangers. I mean, basically, it's just how setting a contract on how everybody should behave at a game. You can set rules like no cursing, no derogatory statements, be respectful to each other, be respectful to the dungeon master. Even a social contract as easy as talking about the rules and stuff like that can be all weaved in to all of this. But here, you will respect your players by running the game that is fun, fair, and tailored to them. That's talking to me as a DM. Talking to you as a DM. This is why another part of what the session zero is important about is you want to be fair. Sometimes I've seen it before. I've made this mistake where sometimes I would overlook a rule, and in my eyes, it would be like it made the story or the situation more interesting. But sometimes you have those players who like to make sure that everybody's following the rules, even the DM, and they might think that's unfair. So you have to make sure you really balance out when you get to those types of situations. Think about the type of group layout that you have, and be careful if you're going to bend these rules. And sometimes, like when I do my session zeros, I warn players that sometimes, for the sake of the story or the situation, I will look at logic over the rules to make the as I see fit, to as I feel that how the story should progress. So there may be times where I will allow something that the book is against, and I make sure that players understand that understand that in the beginning. And I as a DM try to make sure I don't try to show any type of favorites or anything like that, but it's important that you explain this type of stuff at your session zero. Tell them, if it's especially if it's a brand new group of people, tell them tell them tell them your style. If these people don't know you and you don't know them, tell them your style of running the game. If you're loose on laws, if you're a rules lawyer, it's like we follow the rules to the T. Make sure your players know that, and they're going to expect you to follow those rules. Same thing with the players. You need to make sure that you ask the players what type of game do they expect, or what type of game do they want to play. I'll be running another game soon with my friends, and it's going to be a Norse themed type game. And I have campaign ideas for just about anything. Do they want to just do adventure, seek out uh, secrets, follow rumors? Do they want to be actual Vikings on the high seas, raiding, pillaging? Maybe for a local lord, or eventually, for themselves, or eventually they're gonna make enough money to get their own boat and go and go pillaging all around. And I'm sure, and when they do this, they'll find themselves in strange and unique situations that they can explore. There is options for feudal conflict. In a Viking type situation in a fantasy setting, you have different clans that are constantly at each other's throats. The players could side with one particular faction to fight against the other faction to bring to help bring them down and change the course of the actual world itself. The choices, I try to make as many broad choices as I can give an idea to, but I will ask them, what are you looking for? What type of game are you looking for? And I will develop around it. At Dungeon Master, I might have a lot of ideas already thought up, but a lot of times you have to be very flexible as to what your player is looking for in order for, because to me, I have fun just telling the story, rolling the dice, and telling you, explaining the outcome. But the true goal of every game is to make sure my players are having fun. Bottom line, I ask for feedback at the end of every game. I am not a baby. If you say, "Well, I didn't really like this, and I'd like to see more of that," good. If you don't think you're gonna ever hurt my feelings, I'm always out open for criticism, because I always want to make my games better. I may have been doing this for a long time, but it does not mean I am the best. I don't at all believe I am the best dungeon master out there. I still make mistakes. There's still even rules in 5e that I forget as I am playing them. Let's see. Hard or soft limits, they talk about like explaining a hard limit. Like if you, it's like basically like if you cross this line, there is no crossing this line. I never really set those types of limits, but game customizations. I was kind of getting into that already. Which of the three pillars of adventure, combat, exploration, role playing interest you the most? These questions. These are good questions to ask your players. Um, I don't usually do the technology question because I play right now in a specific setting, so the technology level has already been explained. And like for example, this North setting that I'm putting in, that the technology is a little lower. There's nothing mechanical, so crossbows don't even exist. Definitely no guns. So it's only bows and arrows. Most of your other standard weapons, even a couple of additional Norse type weaponry that you would see in these particular types of games. So talking about technology level in your game, um, should be outright. The players should know this definitely going into the game, and I make sure to explain that. I have one homebrew setting where it's more high fantasy, where pretty much anything goes. I still don't do a lot of with guns, no like flintlocks or anything like that. I generally don't like. I don't like that type of play. That I have used them before in other settings, but I usually prefer to run high fantasy, and I tell my players that that's what I'm better at. Um, and in most cases, it's accepted. Puzzles and riddles. Do you enjoy solving them? I do not. I am not. That's one of my flaws as a dungeon master, is to come up with puzzles and riddles. I can do some minor things, and sometimes I think I am clever, and then all of a sudden I had one player. I had a puzzle. It had to do with fiends, and it showed almost like a triangle with 9 slits. They had just fought a whole bunch of floating swords, and there's these slits, and it's supposed to represent the 9 levels of hell. And the object of the puzzle was to stick each of the broken swords after they killed them into certain slots that represent the river Styx that flowed through all the 9 levels of hell to be able to open up this door. And the player looked at it and he thought, "Oh, this is easy." He thought he was using a sacrifice of blood and connecting some of the options, and I'm like, that was a better solution than I thought of, because I suck at making puzzles and riddles, but I do try and make puzzles and riddles for my players to solve. It's just something that I, even after all these years, I really have to work with it. But luckily, a lot of my players, when I do ask this question to them, do they like doing this type of stuff? And a lot of them say no. So I don't put too many puzzles and riddles in a lot of my games. If you do, and and you're good at it, I would love to hear what you have to say, or your examples of puzzles and riddles that you've added to your campaigns, because I'm always looking for a good idea for in regards to that. Experience points, or would your characters advance a level when I tell you? That's a good one. When I first came back this year to run a Dungeons and Dragons game, I went complete classic. I was calculating experience points and keeping track of experience points, and I hated it. I really, really, really hated it. And the games that I've been watching and playing with my other dungeon master, he was doing milestone leveling, and I've really come to adopt this style of gameplay. And as a dungeon master, I'll tell you why. And a lot of it has to do with planning. When you know as a dungeon master that at certain points in a campaign you're going to give your players a new level, it allows you as a dungeon master to be able to plan the rest of your game accordingly to the types of dangers you're going to put your players in. I mean, you can do this with experience points if you know exactly how many experience points they're going to get per session, and then know roughly when they're going to level up. But sometimes that can, if you have random encounters in your game, sometimes that can get a little rough to to plan out. It's not impossible, but you can do it. But milestone leveling helps with that planning, and I even tell my players now as something new that I'm doing, that that the games are milestones, and on average, because it can always change. And this is something new that I'm trying. I tell the players that generally you can expect to gain a level after as many sessions as per your current level. For example, if you're level 3, generally after we play 3 more sessions, I like to call them chapters because sometimes a chapter you can't finish in one session, so I'll say chapters. In 3 more chapters, you'll most likely gain your next level. So after 3 more games, you'll be level 4. Once you're level 4, after 4 more games, you'll be level 5. So on and so on. So as the lower levels seem to go by a little quicker, especially when you get to that that level 3. Level 1, I don't say after 1 session you go level 2. I usually go 2, 2, and then you'll be third. So basically after 4 chapters or 4 sessions, you'll get to level 3, and that's always the big one that everybody likes. I know a lot of people like to start at 3, but I think if you're going to start from the beginning, those first 2 levels help a new character. It helps with that character development, as I was talking about in the beginning. It helps them figure out what their character's attitudes are, what their mannerisms are going to be. So by level 3, when you have when you've chosen, generally that's when you choose most of your subclasses and you have your focus ready to go, or even deciding whether or not, this is usually the time also people start deciding whether or not they're going to start multi-classing to another class between levels 2 and 3. You have a better idea of the character, and you've already role played it for a few sessions, so you have that down pat. This is why when I do my session zeros, it's in my house. It's in my house rules, explained in detail what to expect. So and that's the most important part, is letting know your players what to expect when it comes to milestone leveling, in my opinion, of course. House rules. This is extremely important in a session zero. Now, since I've only been this is my first run this year using 5e rules. I ran a game in a homebrew setting, and it helped me learn a lot of the stuff that I'm explaining here with 5e. And house rules being explained in detail is definitely important. And I have set up, I'll even show you, for a game that I currently that I'm going to be running online. Here we go. I thought I had it open. And let's go full screen. So these are my house rules. I have them on a I play online with some friends. I have them on a Google Drive to be shared with my group. And this is still a work in progress, and it is explained even in my session zero that if we run into some rules that seem to be broken, we will discuss them as a group and decide a proper rule for it, and it will be added to the house rules document for everybody to see. So it's like it's almost like a contract. It's in writing. We're good. So for a new game, here it is. If you're going to play with me, here are my house rules. We do point buy, character creation. I used to do good old rolling of stats, and last time we did that, everybody but one guy, and I used to allow them 3. You can re-roll your stats, all your stats 3 times. If you didn't like your first set, you get to re-roll 2 times. But if you on that third roll, on that third try, whatever your stats were is what you get. It was 46, drop the lowest, old school. Still, I ended up at one player where they had one good stat and like their primary class stat, and then the rest were horrible. And that was on his third roll, and everybody else rolled really well, and you can just tell, that he might not be having as much fun as the rest of them. Everybody's got all these other modifiers and stuff, and he's only good at like one thing. Like, yeah, it could be luck of the luck of the draw, but I like everybody to be somewhere, that everybody has a chance to have fun, to be that hero. I mean, that's how I always like these games. You want to, I want to see heroes. Heroes are born. So I do stat buys now. And, standard rule is you can't have anything higher than a 15 at a start. Only the racial modifiers, after you place your stats, only your racial modifiers can bring it above a 15. But you have your 27 points, and everybody can put their stats the way they want to, add their racial stats. Everybody's happy. There's my example on milestone leveling. I explain the equipment in gold. In most of my worlds, Electrum and Platinum, they do not exist. I don't deal with Electrum or Platinum pieces. It's just copper, silver, gold. I make everybody only have their starting gold from their background. So I don't do the option of instead of getting what you get from your background and your class, that you roll the 5d4 times 10, whatever it may be, and then you buy all your stuff. I go, based on your background, based on your class, but I'm not that stingy. It's like if you want like an extra simple weapon to start with, I'll generally allow it. Like a bard, they don't start with a ranged weapon most of the time, and there's a lot of bards like to have a short bow. It's a simple ranged weapon. Guess what? I'll let you start with one. Not a problem. I'm not even going to let you use your starting gold to buy it. So a lot of the times I will still work with you on starting equipment as long as it's within reason. But again, right here, I make a note that encumbrance rules are in effect. People hate it, but I don't like to see people carrying like 40 short swords with them. Like where are you putting all those? Where are you putting all this stuff? Encumbrance rules are in effect. You keep track of weight. Another example why session 0 is important, so then you know what to expect. I note that I allow multi-classing. You'll see something that says Runewalkers and Insidiary. That's from a specific campaign setting. You have combat. I do not do critical failures. Well, I should say you roll a 1, you miss. It's not a critical failure. You're not hurting somebody. You're not dropping your weapon. It's just a failure. I've seen so many bad things come out of critical failures. It's usually not fun for people, so I make sure to tell my players I just don't. No critical failures. There's no fumble tables. It's just a miss. But whatever goes for the players does go for me as well. So that means monsters don't get critical failures either. Critical damage. When I don't do this, I don't like that you just roll your damage twice. It doesn't feel like you can still roll really low. It doesn't feel like a critical hit to me. Critical hit should be it's something that you strive for. You want to be able to just go and just picture yourself splitting through some enemy's head. So basically I just make it. You do your full damage, old school, full maximum damage on the hit, plus you roll your normal damage and add on top of it. Thank you, Joseph. Yes, thank you for agreeing. I did not like it in 5 when I just saw that you just double the roll because I think I played in the game. No, I was when I ran a game. I was trying to just play raw. I wanted to see how the raw rules worked. Full damage. That's exactly what I've switched over to. Yes. So perfect. Good. So, also just Facebook. If you've never been live before, Facebook. Sometimes I notice there's a delay. So sometimes if I see comments, I don't know what part you're commenting on. So, don't bear with me because I'll try to keep track of comments as best I can. But there is a delay. So, but I was doing the book, rolling double the damage, and I still had a guy roll like all ones, and I'm like, well, you did a critical hit, and you still only did like 7 points of damage. That's with a battle axe. That's lame. Yes. See, you exactly. You know exactly, Joseph, what I'm talking about here. So I changed that, and again, talking about session 0 and how going over house rules. It's important that the players know this. Know this. I added here no instant death, regardless to how much damage you take in a single hit, because I do know with the death saving thing was actually something that was new to me and I liked it. But I do know that there's a rule that if you take enough damage in one hit, it's like what either your full hit point level, almost double your hit points or something like that, you instantly die. You don't get to roll your death saves. No, I don't like killing characters. It happens, especially if you are rolling bad on your death saves. Um, but and I know if you want to think logically, like yeah, if you're fighting a dragon and he happens to step and smush on you, causing hundreds of points of damage, you probably should be dead. Sure, but also this is also a fantasy game. I see you guys as heroes. You're above a normal person. There's something about you that is more resilient to certain things. So no, you still get your death saves. I use optional, the old school 3.5 optional flanking rules. I don't know. I don't know why they got rid of them as a normal rule as it used to be. But to me, I find that a lot of people that I've seen play and that do play when it comes to combat, they like the what's the word? Um, they like to be able to plan. They like to be able to look at the battlefield and God, there's a word for it, and I'm completely drawing a blank. This is showing my age. I'm having like a friggin' senior moment. They like to use strategy. and I always felt flanking was a great strategy. If an enemy is paying attention to one of your comrades and you can get up behind him and shoot him in the back, boom, you get it. You're flanking them. It definitely tactical. There you go. Thank you so much for the word. Yes, they like to be tactical. When I make a map, I try to create tactical situations. I try to create cover. Almost like a video game. Like maybe there's a barrel full of oil over there, and if you light an arrow up and shoot at it, it'll explode if the enemy's too close to it. I try to add that type of stuff so players can be more tactical. So I added in back the flanking rule, but again, I make sure the players realize that if you can flank, I could flank. So watch out if you're fighting a monster and his monster buddy comes up behind you and all of a sudden now has advantage on attack rolls. So what applies to you applies to me, my NPCs, and my monsters. So always uh, uh, remember that. Um, these are when you see classes and spells. I gotta fix that. These are specific to a game I'm running, but if you have any changes to classes, spells, like my DM, he has changes to like some of the higher level spells like resurrection and reviving players, and he also has different certain rules about how illusion and enchantment spells work in his world. It's very important to explain in your world if there's changes to spells or classes in your world that they need to be talked about because this is if DM runs the world, runs the story, and then, it can be very detrimental to a player if he chooses a class and didn't realize that some of the class's abilities in your world have been changed. So if you have any changes in those extreme, probably one of the more important things you need to discuss, in my opinion, on a session zero when we're talking about house rules. But those were just some of my examples, and that list grows if a player has a problem with something or doesn't understand something. We sit together as a group and we discuss it. And if we all come to a consensus on what we all feel is fair, we make it a house rule. It's something that the DM should discuss with all of their players to get their opinions on. I mean, there are some out there that just, DMs that just make the rules like this is the rule and that's it. I always suggest at least discuss it when with your players, your players, especially if it's something that changes later in the game. And that's going to happen. Those house rules. Let's go back to full screen. That's really for the session zero stuff that I want to talk about. Those are a lot of the main topics, and I'm glad. I'm glad to see that they literally gave this a name. Back when I first started, they didn't have this name, but they didn't have the name session zero. You just made characters with your buddies, and we did this already. I did the session zeros before it was a session zero, and I'm glad to see that it's now really become a thing. And a lot of people think, I believe that this is really mandatory, and it helps the game a lot, especially even more on a DM standpoint, where you can make sure everybody's on the same page and the start of the game runs nice and smooth, and then everybody knows what to expect, and then you go forward and you just have a good time. Eventually, if these streams turn out well enough for me, and we develop a following and develop a community together, I eventually will look to do one-shot games with viewers. As it's a thought I've been having, for the future of the stream. But for now, just looking to create some dialogue, looking to create some discussion about certain topics around Dungeons and Dragons. So a lot of these first sessions might be just quick, easy. I actually might have to end this stream a little shorter than I thought I was going to do. And then uh, for those who have stopped by, thank you, Joseph. Thank you so much for following and for stopping by here today. I was going to do another hour, but something came up here, so I might have to cut my first stream short. But getting back into the swing of it, getting back and being in front of the camera, talking things up. But if we can get some momentum here, get in some good dialogue. These streams will be longer. They will have more information, and eventually, I'm going to want to get into some actual live stream gameplay with viewers. That's one of my primary goals, is to get viewers into a game and we play. Play for everybody to watch and get some even audience interaction within the gameplay, in hopes that we can all have a good time. Looking for a good time and to impart advice and information for us all to share on one of our favorite games, Dungeons and Dragons. So, with that, I'm going to end this a little short unless anybody here has any type of comment or wants to discuss any type of topic that in regards to Dungeons and Dragons or role playing in general. Leave a comment. Like this stream if you like the information that you've been here. That helps me a lot. Share it if you can. I definitely want to thank for the shares that we got here today. My alert notification didn't go off for a couple things. I'm still learning how to get the Facebook streaming stuff working, so this is very new to me. But liking posts, sharing posts helps me greatly. Oh, there it is. I see it now. Good. Mike and Jetpack shared the stream. Thank you so much. Oh, what was that? I hear noises. Oh, Joseph, thank you so much for liking the stream. I really do thank you for coming out. You are literally like the second person to talk to me today. So you're like number one in my book for coming by my first stream. I'm going to try to stream again on Wednesday. Keep an eye on the channel. I'm going to set it up early like I did this one. I'm going to go over some other topics that I've gotten ideas for, and we'll move from there. So, thank you all. You have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and come by Wednesday. I'm going to say about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I greatly appreciate it, Joseph. Join if you haven't done so. Look at my the groups page for I have a community group, the Drunken Chain Inn, which is a name of when if eventually I do community content, it'll revolve around the Drunken Chain Inn, where any adventurer gets all the rumors and all the adventures that the inn could possibly express to the world, and it will be the focal point of a lot of future content that I have planned. It'll be a slow and steady race, but as long as we're all having fun doing so, hopefully we can get this community up and moving. Thank you again. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and peace.